A big warm welcome to our December webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. I know it's a chaotic time of year for many of you, so pretty privileged to have people here. And I think first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to our brilliant panelists who have joined us today. They've obviously all taken their time out of a busy week, Christmas parties, all of those things that happen this time of year. And to share their insights into this topic. And I think it's a pretty fascinating one, obviously given the time of year, but also everyone's thinking ahead now to 2025 and beyond. Very timely for us to have a discussion on this. I'll let them all introduce themselves in a second, but today my guests come from a mix of industries. So we've got skincare, we've got fragrance, we've got publishing, but all obviously what they've got in common is a deep understanding of what seasonal moments can do for brands, as well as their experience in running some very successful campaigns with us as well. So really privileged to have them today. And at Sampl, we've been fortunate enough to work with many brands in these industries, and essentially brands that use sampling to accelerate the success of these seasonal campaigns. But the devil's obviously always in the detail. So what I think we'll get into today is just the strategies, challenges, successes that make seasonal campaigns both critical for brands, but also how we make them successful. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm Adam. So I joined Sampl back in July as the marketing director. Prior to that, I spent the last 9 years brand side, mainly at Beiersdorf, doing digital marketing for Nivea Men. So I've seen firsthand just how seasonal peaks are so vital, but also just how challenging it can be to consistently stand out and obviously get that right every single time, which I never managed to, but we can unpack that as well. But we're also thrilled to obviously have a wide range of webinar attendees today as well. We've got global attendees, and we'd love for obviously you guys to make this as engaging as possible as well. So feel free to drop in the chat any questions that you've got, and we'll try and cover them as many as possible in the Q&A at the end. So enough of my waffle. Without further ado, let's hand over to our amazing panel to introduce themselves. Harriet, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Harriet from the Handbook. We're an online leading lifestyle magazine covering fashion, beauty, lifestyle. So I'm coming from a publisher point of view. So hopefully I can contribute some useful insights.
Awesome, thank you. Rosie, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hello, I'm Rosie. I am brand manager for some luxury fragrance brands. We are now part of Caring Beauty. So that's super exciting. And we've worked with Sampl doing some sampling for Mise en Cire, which is one of our brands.
Thank you. And last but not least, Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick. I work at Weleda and we are a skincare company, but we also make healthcare products, so natural and organic products. One of our biggest brands is Skin Food, so the iconic green tube, if anybody knows it. And yeah, like Rosie, we've also done some sampling with the great team at Sampl.
Amazing. Thank you very much, everyone. So let's jump into it. So I'd love first of all just to understand, what are the key ingredients, do you think, for successful seasonal campaigns? And Nick, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a whole bunch of ingredients, if I'm honest. I noted down 3 or 4 things that I think are really key. And it's probably worth saying that at Weleda, I'm in the trade marketing function, so very much working directly with retailers. So from my perspective at the team here, planning is absolutely key because we'll be working 6, 7, 8 months out to actually lock activity in with retailers. But for planning, we're probably working 12 or 18 months in advance. So yeah, absolutely planning and working as far out as possible, I think I would say. Another ingredient would be learnings, understanding what worked in your last campaign, maybe something that didn't work, but also throwing new things in. So I guess what we try not to do is always have a copy paste mentality. We're trying to do something a little bit different every time. And, the trends are different. So, if you're thinking about your kind of social parts of your campaigns, then trying to hit the right trends, which can obviously be challenging because they're over by tomorrow. And then probably the last one that I wrote down was just time of year. So for us as a skincare brand, particularly when you're thinking about Skin Food, which is very much for dry skin, it's getting that time of year right. So what might work online or as a social campaign might not actually land in terms of footfall in stores. So one of our sort of bigger learnings from recently is we do a lot around Fashion Week in September, but actually footfall into store is kind of doing this, from the sort of back end of October. People are going in for Christmas, to start their Christmas shopping. So yeah, it might be that not all of our campaign lands all in a window like this. It's kind of spread out, just taking advantage of where your campaign is landing.
Nice. So seasonal moments as actual seasons rather than specifically for a specific peak like Christmas or Mother's Day or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe overlapping. So, as I say, for us, a big season is Fashion Week, but that kind of overlaps with winter skin as well. So actually, building out the whole calendar, I think, to take advantage of all those moments.
Very cool. Thank you. Rosie, what about you?
So I fully agree with everything that Nick has just said. Like planning and locking stuff in with retailers, you've got to do it months and months in advance, because you need to book that slot. I also think it's really important to have multiple touch points across the customer journey. So when you're thinking about something being a successful campaign, you can't just hit in store. You need in store, you need online, you need the social media and all of those ingredients coming through. And we interestingly do work towards things like Father's Day, Mother's Day. Obviously, Christmas is a big one that goes on for a long time, but we do try and hit those key points, and Valentine's Day as well for fragrances is always a big one. So, yeah.
Nice. And Harriet, what about for publishers? How do you find that brands work with you for those kind of key seasonal moments, and what kind of key ingredients do you find the successful ones get right?
Yeah, I think from our side, it's really building that familiarity before the key sort of retail moments. It's sort of like building that relationship, building awareness, and then sort of teeing it up really nicely to those big. So, Q4 is obviously huge, Christmas, there's so much going on, but actually working with us potentially, a few months ahead so that our readers, are seeing the brand on site, on social, or via our newsletter. And then when it comes down to those key moments during Christmas, they're like, great, I've already seen that. Great, I've already actually had a sample of that product. So it's kind of a really, it's a wider strategy. There's so many things that you can focus on. But I think in terms of timing and sort of having that build up to those moments is really important for us, and how we can also help with brands.
Nice. And what does that look like? Does that look like do you mean from a single channel? Do you try and focus across, I guess, your whole like media distribution? How do you kind of, what does a successful campaign look like for that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for a brand itself, their wider marketing campaign, we maybe form just one part of that. But within that one part, we also have multiple touch points. We have our daily newsletter that goes out to the database. We have our social channels. So when we put together packages for brands, we obviously want to understand what sort of budgets they have, what objectives, and then we can put together a really tailored package based on those to really make sure that we're helping them achieve those objectives, make sure they're reaching the right audience, and actually having that customer journey as well. So our readers might see it, as I said, they might see it the first time in a newsletter, then they might see a social campaign that we've done, and then the sampling on top of that. So it's that really sort of nice cocktail of activity that's going to really have an impact in the build up to, and then also during those key retail moments.
Nice. And then kind of you've all mentioned planning, you've all mentioned obviously kind of preparation ahead of time, but obviously there are multiple different seasonal moments that you can pick, and also lots of brands obviously vying for that same space as well. So it is becoming more and more crowded, very competitive. What would you say are the kind of secrets to standing out in for brands in that space? Rosie, do you want to answer this one?
Yes, so for me, I really, really, really believe that getting the product to people and getting them to be able to try it way before the moment makes a big difference. So we ran a campaign with Sampl, as you know, and we did ours in kind of September time in order for all the product to kind of be experienced by the customer, and then they can either come into store, online, to begin to think about buying it. So for me, it's actually bringing the product in, not with a Christmas feel in September, because nobody really likes that anymore. So it's all happening too early now. Having the product in first. Nick, do you feel the same way?
100%. I was just going to add, we did something very similar, Rosie. So when we had our very first Skin Foods TV campaign, a couple of years back now, that's the first time we worked with Sampl. So we delivered samples out to shoppers, which landed a month or so before the TV landed. And then we had all of our in-store activation. So the theory being that people are trying the product and then they're reminded when they see it, on TV, hopefully, or on their socials. and then there's the opportunity to buy in store. So yeah, totally agree, Rosie.
It's a great point, because I think it's something that we've discussed quite a lot internally as well, particularly if you're trying to get reviews on a retailer platform, for instance, and trying to obviously kind of align that. How do you both kind of, I guess, think about that? Is it just go within your planning cycle and you try and factor it in months before and then just make sure that the reviews land, or do you have kind of a different approach for, I guess, different campaigns that you might run?
From our perspective, we'll try and send samples out as soon as we get our hands on the stock. So you might not be able to find it in store just yet, but almost the moment that it arrives in the warehouse, we're wanting to send it out so that we're delivering reviews, so that when they go live on a retailer website, actually there are reviews like there immediately, with kind of 24 hours. I mean, that would be our strategy for MPD. But then for existing products, because we have a huge kind of back catalogue, we would then almost pick the right time to send those out. Products that have been around for a long time that probably only got a handful of reviews, and we want to give them a boost. So we'll just choose moments through the year for products like that. But yeah, certainly MPD for me, you want to be landing on retailer websites with reviews ready.
Makes sense. And how important are retailer partnerships in launches, and how do you kind of think about, I guess, your strategy for launch for specific retailers? Because I know, Nick, obviously this is your world, but how do you, interested to kind of know how you kind of fit your strategies to suit the different retailers.
It really depends on the product. So we have lots of different ranges at Weleda. So we have a big baby range. So it might be that we look at exclusive launches with some retailers, whether it be, just for a kind of moment in time or for something slightly longer. So exclusiveness can drive real value for us. Retailers really get behind that kind of opportunity. But we might do different executions out in stores. Around Fashion Week, we did our first lot of experiential activity in boot stores. So we brought makeup artists into store and we held masterclasses, but we wouldn't do that across the board. I mean, you wouldn't do that in a kind of Sainsbury's or Tesco, but actually on you kind of sort of beauty high street retail, that works really nicely. But then we might do something different for other retailers. So we'll try and pick and choose our activations based on, I guess, what the shopper's doing, how they shop in that environment, and what they're going to be interested in. Are they browsing, or are they just literally pushing the trolley and want to get it in and get out of the store as fast as possible? So we'll look at, it could be a product thing, it could be a campaign thing, but we're really just trying to, I guess, choose what's the best. What are we going to activate, right? And is it about awareness or is it about conversion? So we will always try and put things into those buckets to understand, what's the ROI going to be. Nice.
And Harriet, how much of that do you get shared from a publisher point of view, and how much do you get involved in retailer partnerships or, I guess, things around that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we as a content partner don't not normally have as much involvement in sort of in-store retail side of things, but actually we did a partnership with Kristen Louboutin recently, which was in Selfridges pop-up. And our content creator went down and created an amazing reel, which actually is one of our top performings this year. So it's really interesting to see how our part that we play within that, and obviously creating awareness. It's all about the brand awareness, promoting those key pop-ups and moments that the brand have worked on during this time. So I think that went live a few weeks ago. So that's obviously performed super well, whether it was the time that it was posted, but also the content, obviously it resonated with our readers. So it's a combination of things. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, nice. And Rosie, how does it differ for luxury and obviously the kind of different retailers, obviously, but is there any kind of nuances for that?
Well, so absolutely, there are definitely differences. Different retailers have a different customer base. So, for example, Harrods customer is very different to a Fenwick customer. So if we're looking at Harrods, it's kind of that personal touch, the luxury element. It's about finding the best of the best of the best. So when you're talking to those customers, you're talking with very elegant language and these kinds of things. When we're looking at kind of Fenwick and our regional customers, we have a much more kind of down-to-earth and relaxed approach with them, because they tend to be regular customers who come in. They're not just the tourists who are coming in, doing their bits and going. But without a doubt, I agree with Nick, exclusivity plays a really big part. And if you can have a really nice relationship with the retailer And so there's a brand that I look after called Juliet Has a Gun, and they are very much aligned with the Space NK customer. So this year we partnered with them and did an exclusive period for one of our launches, and it's now the top seller across all of Space NK. So the customer does respond, and it's about picking the right scent for the right retailer, and then you can bring it together well. And Space NK is a very, very digital and very social. Their social team is fantastic. So if you can tap into that younger social customer, then it really works well, bringing awareness to the retailer and the brand within the retailer.
Nice. That brings me really nicely onto my next question, because I was thinking about the kind of rise of influencers. Obviously, we've all seen TikTok Shop explode in the last few months, but obviously over the last 18 months, we've now seen a lot more in social selling. I'm interested, Harriet, like how much do they influencers or expert opinions play versus, say, gifting guides and some of the things that you're obviously doing from an editorial point of view? Like, how do you kind of see those playing out?
I mean, every year our Christmas gift guide is the biggest one, obviously, that we do. We also do our Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Father's Day. So we run them annually because we see really good results. And I think from our side, our readers follow us because we're a trusted voice, and they obviously are following us because they like our style, and they're sort of, it's that sort of engagement. So we're basically, with our gift guides, are filtering through the noise of all the promotions, things going on. So our readers know that actually I'm going to go on the handbook, look at their gift guide, and know that the products in that gift guide are going to be relevant to me, and that are going to be the most, relevant to the seasonally, but also the cool new products that are available, but also ones that have been in that gift guide year on year because of the quality and because they're partners that we've worked with. So I think there is a lot of credibility in our gift guides, and obviously they do have they're also great to look through in your lunch break. And I feel like we've been promoting it. We went live end of October, so we were quite early to promote our gift guides, but it's that sort of promoting it and then also promoting each category in the run up to Christmas, and obviously the engagement obviously keeps them growing, which is really good.
Do you find they're getting bigger every year?
They are a bit of a machine, a bit of a beast. Our editorial team have a very big job each year, but it's also one of those things, once it's live, the amount of brands that obviously get in contact with us once they are live, because they sort of, this all can be included, can we do that and whatever, but it's more with our gift guides as well. They tend to form part of a wider partnership, so that will be run alongside an editorial piece. Obviously we've got a few products that we've done sampling campaigns, their products are in there as well, so it's that sort of, again, as we mentioned before, they've seen the standalone editorial piece, they've got the sample, and then they've seen it in the gift guide, and that's when they're most likely to drive that purchase and actually call to action, and then obviously hopefully lead to a purchase as well. So it's a really good strategic customer journey there as well.
Nice.
That opinion is really important for us as well. If you think about like our baby ranges, we do a lot of work with midwives, and so having that kind of expert trusted opinion is absolutely key. And similar to skin food, we'll be talking to makeup artists who are almost like the expert, who are then your best ambassadors because they're passing it on to the people that they're using the product for. So it's a huge part of our business, really, talking to the right people who are then spreading the word.
I think in separate to gift guides, we also do a lot of reviews and tried and tested. Only, once we've actually, and those are super impactful and they perform really well because it's, I'm the beauty editor and this is a product that I'm, it's in my makeup bag, and pairing that again with those, sampling campaigns or anything else that we're doing with that on social, those are, they perform really well because it's sort of, there's more authenticity to it as well.
Definitely.
The original influencers, right? Publishers and those types of things. Nick, you mentioned obviously Fashion Week as being one. Do you partner with influencers as part of that as an activation, or is it just around Fashion Week that you see it? I'm interested in the kind of role that influencers and social selling plays for Weleda.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more important, I would say. So originally we were very much just kind of backstage, so you wouldn't necessarily have seen Weleda or Skin Food at Fashion Week, but now we're kind of sending influencers backstage, so we'll get them to create content for us. So they'll be kind of doing a bit of a tour around, and they're doing a bit of a get ready, this is how we use the product. So yeah, absolutely, we use lots of, I guess, the influencers with a bigger following for that kind of thing, but then we'll engage lots of micro influencers for actual product demonstrations, because I think people want to see expert content, but people also want to see real life. and real people using real products, because things can look too curated, I think, when it's experts. If they're talking about ingredients or a method or something that is a bit more engaging, I think, but actually if I'm going to purchase a product, actually I want to know that it's, you know, it's going to feel nice, it's going to smell nice, and kind of you believe real people, I think, more than experts sometimes. I think you need both. It's different messages, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. You definitely need both. And actually, we do use influencers quite a lot, and we do quite a lot of gifting to influencers so that their followers can kind of look at it, see it. And I've recently done a few store days, because we do store days over peak to go and support in store. And as people were coming up to the brand, you know, naturally my job, I'm like, how did you find out about the brand? Because it's always really good. And 9 out of 10 times it's either through receiving samples or through because they've seen it on social media. So it plays a huge role in fragrance. And then it gets them into store. And once they smell it, then they've smelt it, then they love it, because, you know, they're beautiful fragrances. So, yeah.
It's funny, even before, so we launched TikTok during my time at Nivium, and I say we were fairly late to it versus the evolution of TikTok, but even way before that, like the customer interviews that we ran, like most people were saying, oh, I found out about it through TikTok, through whatever, like social discovery, and that played so much role in it, even without the brand obviously being there. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me, Rosie, that you get that. All of you talked on planning and kind of preparing for seasonal success quite a lot at the start. Interested, what does preparation look like, and kind of how you mentioned kind of nearly a year out having a calendar, but yeah, interested to dig into that a little bit more. Nick, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first port of call for us will always be product. So, you know, we can have quite long lead time, particularly if it's samples, because we might just do like a one-off annual batch production. So my starting point will always be product and how far in advance I need to order that. And then I guess retailers are the next step. So the sooner you can engage people, the better, I would say. I know Rosie was nodding along. I think we're probably both coming from the same hymn sheet in that regard. So yeah, I guess just working as far in advance as you can. But I think the tricky for me in the process is always, you can do so much in advance, but then, you know, perhaps your content creation or your social plans come so much later. So it's just about getting the right people involved in conversations at the right time, because different departments work at, you know, different. I like to work very far in advance. Some people are quite happy working kind of up to the line. So that's always a bit of a challenge, I think. Yeah, as far as you can, really, I think, from our perspective. I mean, NPD development for us can be 2-3 years out from a global perspective, but yeah, activation definitely 12 months for sure.
Do you deliberately create the content later because you talked about trends and obviously trying to play into that a bit more? Is that a deliberate thing to try and make sure that you are on trend at the time, or do you just sequence those things in differently?
It's probably more around just finding the right influencers, if that's, you know, that part of what you're doing. The trend piece kind of comes organically, I think, but it's more, I guess, finding influencers that are right at the time. So definitely the social planning, you know, I'm not responsible for that in our team, but I know that comes, you know, quite a lot further down the track. But yeah, so I think that's just the way different teams work. I think social teams work just a lot later than is my comfort zone.
And what about you, Rosie? What does planning mean for your world?
Well, so we're very lucky that we normally tend to know about our product launches around about a year in advance. Then obviously sometimes there are delays with production and bits and pieces, because, you know, these things happen. But when it comes to planning campaigns, we always kind of start thinking about the shape of it at least 6 months in advance, at least. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with the production side of things, but we do need to be able to forecast to the global team so that they can get everything ready for us. And we've actually already forecasted everything for 2025, all the sampling bits and everything that we're doing, so that the brands know exactly how much of everything that we really want. So, because there's nothing worse than planning something and then there just not being enough stock. to cover it. So, but yes. And then when it comes to, you kind of have the shape of what you want and you have the ideas of what you want. And I completely agree with Nick. There are some things that you need to really start activating super early. And there are other things like digital where it happens much faster, much snappier and much closer to the line because it's just faster to action.
Nice. And Harriet, what about with I guess the role that publishers play with this? Do you get briefed like far out, or is it a case of you would prefer to be briefed even further out so that you can plan? I probably know the answer to this, but yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things. Obviously, the more time we have to plan and create the content, send it for approval, obviously the better. This time of year, it's our busiest time of the year, so we're having to manage multiple campaigns and making sure that we're obviously catering to our clients and what their preferred dates are. So in terms of this time of year, and especially around key retail moments, it's obviously as much time in advance that we can have that time to obviously secure their preferred dates. But again, being digital, we can be quite agile and flexible. Yeah, it's one of those things. The more time, the better. But actually, when there are last minute things, if we have a brand saying, and if we work with a brand for a long time as well, we're, familiar with each other, we know how each other work, we send over client briefing forms so we can gain all the assets and information that we need to produce that content. But say if we've worked with a brand for a long time and say, look, we need a newsletter inclusion next week, we can be agile and flexible with that. So it's, again, as much planning as possible, but we can also be agile. So
nice. And I'm assuming it's the longer form or video content or anything like that that's obviously the longer lead time that you need for it.
Our poor content creator, we've got two at the moment, but they have literally been back to back every day filming content and then producing the content. So yeah, lots of editing as well. So it's very busy, but also it's making sure that we are producing good quality content and that we've got the right balance so we don't stretch ourselves. So it's just a balancing act, but we've got a really good team behind us who are experts in what they do. So it's really helpful.
Nice. I think it's funny, like I've obviously having done media roles, digital roles and things like that, it always seemed to catch everyone out just how anything on planning like that, and there's always last minute requests obviously and things that need to come in, but equally at the same time, like working with publishers like yourself who can be flexible and move things around is like the best the best thing. I know your writers probably won't thank you for that.
Yeah, but I'm like, just don't have got any more room for another. Yeah, I'm not very popular in the office when I do that, but we always try and make it work. And actually, interestingly, Black Friday, I know it's not necessarily sort of seasonal. I guess it is seasonal, but a lot of that was last minute this year, and I think that's probably the most last minute sort of seasonal retail moment that we have had this year. Is that obviously brands are confirming what they're offering quite last minute. So that was again a quick turn, like a lot of assets and quick turning around to get that content out there. That was quite interesting.
Nice. Do you, out of interest, do you break your audience up? So if you think about kind of customer segmentation and things like that, would you typically do, say, 100% share of voice to your audience? How do you kind of think about customer segmentation?
So we are very London centric, 70% female. We're quite familiar with, obviously the content that we put out, what we know performs well and what doesn't, and we learn from that each time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like data that we have, which we can analyze. But we feel like we've got a very good understanding of who our audience are and what's going to appeal to them.
Nice. And what about you, Rosie? How do you think about customer segmentation for your products?
So we kind of think about it more by retailer. So because we can ask the retailer about their customers, and then we can get anecdotal bits from our store staff as well. We tend to think about it more on the retailer side, and then how do we tailor it for that retailer's customers?
And do you get personas then from the retailers to kind of specifically tailor your campaigns? Do you go into that sort of level of detail, or do you just think about like broadly, I need this to work in Harrods, for instance?
It's much broader because we don't have that much data available to us about the retailer's customers. So when we run, say, email campaigns and bits with a retailer, we can say to them, okay, we want to run this to your VIP customers, or we want you to run it to these guys on the loyalty spend customers. So we are able to specify who we would like to receive the emails because the retailers know their customers. As a general, we think about it as groups of retailers.
Yeah, we're a little bit similar to that. Sorry, Adam, if you don't mind me adding. Yeah, we would get sometimes more like consumer profile data from the retailers. Superdrug are really good at sharing that kind of thing. Boots, so we've historically purchased ad card data. So that can be really useful for having the loyalty card information so that you can really understand who is shopping. We're trying to understand the shopper journey. So I guess it's really different for fragrance, but for skin food particularly, when people are wanting to try the product for the first time, they're probably going into a Boots or a Superdrug, picking it up, looking at the packaging, maybe even opening it up and smelling it. But then if they're repurchasing, they're probably going to a grocer or they're going to Amazon or an online retailer, which is from a convenience perspective. So yeah, we try and see it in both ways. So what's the journey as well as the profile of who's shopping in those retailers. So it's a bit of a jigsaw sometimes.
Yeah, I remember back in the early days of kind of like funnels and segmentation and things like that, thinking, if a Tesco shopper is a Tesco shopper, or someone specifically shops in one retailer for something, and like obviously customer journeys are so much different now. It's an interesting balance act to try and figure out both like something that's interesting for a retailer, but also something that's interesting for a consumer, right? And like trying to be able to follow them along that. Do you specifically segment, Nick, on do you have segments your side as well from the brand, or do you again rely like Rosie does on the kind of retailer segments?
Yeah, we do. Actually, we have global segments, so almost like a profile of who would buy a Weleda product or a baby product. But actually, we have our own local ones now because having done some loyalty card research, we know that our profile is a bit different. So our shopper in the UK is younger. They're probably less affluent than our kind of European counterparts would be. And I think that's down to the retailer profile. So of course, when you're shopping skincare in Europe, it's a very different experience to shopping over here. So yeah, we have our own tweaked version of customers. Yeah.
Nice. And what about, so when you're planning then a kind of seasonal campaign, how do you think about your channel mix? So obviously, Nick, you mentioned there like you've got a slightly different segment versus say Europe. I used to remember getting media plans from Europe saying this is the way that we would suggest spending your media plans, and then obviously tweaking them on a local base, obviously to fit us as well. How do you think about that? Like, how do you start to try and prioritize channel mixes and obviously things that are going to resonate most around a specific moment?
For us, it would be different by product group. So if you're talking skin food, it's much more mass, it's more beauty. So you would prioritize your high street retailers. So Boots predominantly, Holland and Barrett, and probably some of the beauty online retailers as well. If it's baby, then you're probably thinking a little bit more about grocery because it's your kind of everyday top-up shop type item, as well as Boots, which is your more kind of your discovery. Parents will tend to go to an actual store, like I was saying earlier, to actually do their kind of research. So if it's a skin food campaign, we're probably going to be talking primarily to your Boots, maybe your Sephora's, Look Fantastic. Whatever we're, themed to the campaign that we're trying to bring alive. So if it is makeup artists and it's masterclasses, then it's that kind of environment because you couldn't deliver that in a grocery environment.
And do you always think about, say, having say PDPs and things like that? So obviously your e-commerce online store, do you think about that and having that in a really good position as well as your in-store, or do you think prioritizing in-store?
Depends on the budget for the campaign, in all honesty. Yeah, I mean, if you had all the budget in the world, you'd do it all, wouldn't you? But so we would have to generally pick the retailer and the channel, I suppose, that we would want to really go all out for and try and make that as prominent and as great as we could, because you can't do it all. Rosie, I'm sure you guys are the same. It's if you had unlimited budget, it would be amazing, but we don't.
And what about you, Rosie? How do you think about kind of in-store versus digital media and the kind of balance between them?
So what we see is we have a better ROI on digital versus in-store, purely because a lot of the time in-store activations are just more expensive to do because you're physically building things. It takes teams of people. You've got to get everything in, everything out. You tend to get a better ROI on digital activations. Also, when I'm looking at Juliet Has a Gun, it's a younger customer and they're really, really digital savvy. And actually the mix of business for us is about 50-50 online and in store, but it's the digital mix is growing much more. But we saying that we do really like activating in store because it's fun and everybody can kind of touch it, feel it, they can experience it very instantly. Whereas when we're doing lots of digital bits, that's you can't experience the product straight away unless we're doing it around sampling. So, and with fragrance, people mostly don't blind buy fragrances because, especially in the luxury world, it's quite large spend on something that you can't return if you don't like it. So yeah, being able to get the product to people alongside the campaign so they're seeing it, but then experiencing it makes a big difference within fragrance.
Nice. Final question, and then we'll put it to the floor. If you had one piece of advice for a brand prepping for their first major seasonal campaign, and Harriet, will go to you first because you've got probably slightly different perspective than these guys. But if you had one piece of advice for a brand obviously coming to partner with you on trying to make the success out of something seasonal, what would it be?
I think they've just got to have really sort of clear objectives and who they're trying to reach and what they're trying to achieve from it. Obviously, we've spoken about building that familiarity with us, if you're working with us as a content partner in the run up to those key retail moments. So sort of the best advice would be having a really strategic campaign which has investing enough budget that you're going to have, not just a one-off piece of activity, which is a one-hit wonder, but actually having that, with fashion brands in particular, beauty brands as well, we work on quarterly like partnerships. So basically, they're building up that familiarity, and we're promoting them each quarter to make sure that our readers know who they are and they're trusted. We wouldn't be working with them if we didn't think they were a good fit for our audience. So I think that's probably my key bit of advice there.
Nice. Really good. By the way, if anyone's got questions, I'm just I'll open up the Q&A now. We'll drop them in. We'll let Nick and Rosie also answer, but it'll give people time to type out any questions as well at the same time. Rosie, what about you? What advice would you give?
I would say plan.
Yeah.
And something that we find really useful is when we have our project plan, knowing exactly who is going to do what and have that written down. So if you've got a document where everybody knows exactly what task is whose responsibility, makes everything much clearer, and having delivery dates as well. And obviously with your delivery dates for each piece of campaign, you know that you need to include some slippage time as well. So plan for slippage because there's always going to be some somewhere.
Out of interest, what does a plan to you, what do you kind of plan in? Do you put it all on a big spreadsheet? How do you think about that?
Yes, yeah. Big spreadsheet. So, for example, when we were planning for Christmas this year, we had a spreadsheet actually for the whole company. So all departments had exactly what their peak actions were, when the deadlines were, if it had been done, and then if anybody had any questions, everybody knew exactly who to go to ask about it. And exactly who was responsible for what, which made everything run much, much more smoothly.
Interesting. Nick?
Totally agree with what both Harriet and Rosie have said. And yes, I'm on board with the plan. I think what I would add to that is do your homework, do your research. So whether that is, if you're launching online only, it's spending time on the socials, it's seeing what people are talking about, what they're engaging with. What are your competitors doing? What looks like it's working? Go and spend time in store if you're launching in a Holland & Barrett or a Superdrug or wherever. Just go and spend time in those stores and actually see how people shop and what they do. Because I think that you can miss so much from not actually seeing what a shopper physically does. What they tell you they will do and what they actually do are totally different things. So for me, it's doing your research. It's whether it's your channel, it's your shopper, it's online. It's just being open and observing as much as you possibly can.
Great advice. We've not had any questions coming in, so I think you guys have just done a fantastic job. Oh no, here we go. We have had one in just on time. Thanks, Tom. So first question then, what are some of the key trends that are currently driving fragrance and skincare sales? And I'll let anyone jump in on this one.
So with fragrance, people are very, very, very focused, and there's a big trend with oud at the moment, which I think is now, because oud before was a kind of a very big scary word, and everybody thought that it was really heavy and it wasn't good. And I think there's so much more awareness around it that you can have heavy ouds, but you can have light ouds and all of these bits. And it's super interesting to see different ingredients having their moment. Next year, what I'm seeing is there's a lot of fruity fragrances and specifically strawberry, because 2 years ago, one of the major fragrance houses, well, they created a way to extract a molecule which smelt like a real strawberry. So lots of the brands are sending that out next year, which I think is really interesting. So that's one to watch.
Really interesting. I saw an amazing graph on LinkedIn the other day actually that was followed fragrance scents since like the 70s and was showing the kind of ups and downs of them. And it's just I love those sorts of things where I just kind of follow trends and things like that. But I think it was oud stayed very, very close to the top almost like throughout that. But some of them, I said like something like vanilla, for instance, had a major rocky patch in the 90s, I think, and then massively come back. But you just find yourself rooting for certain fragrances over the time. What about you, Nick? What do you think is kind of driving? Yeah, what trends are currently driving skincare?
There's hundreds, if I'm honest. It's hard to pick out some of the bigger ones. I think there's always ingredient trends.
Yeah.
So something like rosemary for scalp care and for your hair has been enormous on TikTok for the past kind of 18 months or so, and that's a bit of a juggernaut. It doesn't seem to be slowing down at the moment. But then single ingredients like vitamin C, or it might be something like peptides or retinol. There's always a handful of ingredient trends that are going on. I think probably another one is what's the word? Skinimalism, minimizing your skincare routine. So there was a big kind of people were having these incredible 12-step routines, particularly over COVID when people just had more time to indulge in that kind of routine. But now people are really pulling back from that and wanting more, I guess, products that will do more for them. So you're having, you don't necessarily want to follow a 12-step routine at the end of the day for the absolute right reasons is sustainability. So I think, the rise of companies being B Corp, there's obviously, things go in and out of trend, that kind of, whether it's packaging and recyclability or it's, the sourcing of ingredients and the provenance of ingredients. So that there's always sustainability trends going on, which is from our perspective as an extremely sustainable company is great and should be top of the list for everybody.
For sure. Harriet, anything to add from?
I feel like you've heard from the experts. I mean, we probably you let us know what the trends are and we write about it. I think we probably do cover most sort of fashion beauty trends, but we also like to stick very much to sort of our style and our brands that we believe in that we work with. So it's interesting to see what trends there are.
Nice. Another question then. Can you share a personal experience or a lesson that's transformed your thinking on seasonal marketing? And how do you think seasonal marketing is going to evolve in the coming years? So you can answer, I guess, either side of that question, but anything that you think has like transformed how you think about seasonal marketing, or like trends that you think are going to come.
So for me, thinking about seasonal marketing before this season was a real big game changer for me. Not kind of like just in that 1 month, but like Harriet was saying and Nicola was saying, dropping the fragrance, the brand, everything in a month at least beforehand, so people are already thinking about it. That was a big learning for me at the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
It's really interesting actually as well, talking, obviously about the sampling campaigns and how obviously fragrance, not many customers are going to go and just buy a fragrance completely blind, but actually that's where, sampling campaigns are so important, integral to that sort of the success of it, is that obviously they're seeing it online, they read about it, but then they have that sample. So it kind of cuts out the retailer, I guess, and gives the product directly to our audience. So that's a really effective way of, a really good partnership. And I know we've done a really good one recently with you guys. We've seen some really good results. I think you reached sort of 95% of a new audience as well. So
yes.
That was really, really great to see.
I think something like so that specific case is really nice also because I think you had 5 cents, didn't you, Rosie, that you obviously were offering out on that, and we used some pre-qualifying questions and then matched the right scent to the right person. And I think that those types of activations, obviously you can't really do with traditional media for one, but also you get some really nice insight that then should inform then what you're doing
Yeah.
afterwards. So it's a really nice, yeah, I'm a big fan of that as a case study, obviously, but it's yeah, really nice example.
Yeah, it was also something that was really interesting to me was because we had 5 different kinds of scent, was seeing which ones ran out first because we had almost equal amounts of each one to go out. So it was really interesting to see what people requested versus actually what our sales numbers were, and the mix of business on certain SKUs didn't match up to how quickly the samples went out. So I
Interesting.
found that very interesting.
And has
I was
that
thinking
changed the way? Oh, go on, sorry, Nick.
No, I was going to say one of my personal learnings that I was going to share actually follows
Yeah.
on perfectly from what Rosie just said, which is about the data and always making sure you're going back and analysing the results of your campaign so that you can bring those learnings into the next one, because generally you'll find something in there which kind of blows your mind and you go, I had literally no idea that was going to happen, or something's gone, lip has gone so well, like so much better than we thought, and there's a reason for that. And it's only really if you go back and do the number crunching that you really understand that kind of thing. But then on the flip side, I think not getting overwhelmed with so much of the ROI that you just don't then do anything with it, if you know what I mean. So yeah, sorry to jump in, Adam. It followed on perfectly from what Rosie said.
No, so it's a great point. I mean, it resonated also when you were saying about obviously planning so far in advance, but also seeing what customers do in store. And obviously, if you're planning for a Valentine's Day push, Valentine's Day won't come around for another 12 months. So you obviously in store at that time, but then remembering and having the foresight to look back at that data or look back at your learnings then to then inform what you do next year. Obviously, it's not gonna completely change it because obviously different products change and trends and things like that. But I found it's something that I didn't do anywhere near often enough. But when I did, that massive impact then on how I thought about things. You just forget, right? Like you're a year out from doing it. So yeah, I think that's probably my biggest learning through it. To your point, Nick, is just trying to go back and remember to have the foresight to go back again and look. So yeah, I think that's a really good one. Final question, because I'm very conscious of all of your guys' time. What can you share a success story of a seasonal campaign, and what do you think made it so effective?
So I think my example would be our first big skin foods campaign. So we did a regional TV campaign. I mentioned it obviously earlier in the session, but that was the first time it felt like we'd really got our ducks in a row in terms of the samples with you guys at Sampl landed, and then we were on TV, and then we were activating out in store. It really felt like, yeah, we've got the ducks in the row, the strategy worked, sales went like this, and it's all, of course, a moment in time, with different things different factors affecting the campaign. But yeah, I think it's quite satisfying, I think, when you do a job like mine, when you've planned it all and you've seen it executed, and then you can look back and celebrate it. So yeah. That would be
Nice. I don't think we celebrate things like that often enough either, because we're generally most of us on to the next one, right? So being able to look back and see that's why I love writing up case studies and trying to dig back through the data, because I get a lot of joy out of just kind of seeing a plan executed or changed as it's gone and seeing what that's done to it. So I think that's a really nice example. What about you, Harriet? Have you seen a brand execute something very well around seasons? Can anything kind of spring to mind, or
Yeah, I mean, obviously the sampling campaign we've done with you guys performed really well. I think we had over 7,000 samples successfully sent out. 95% of those were new customers for you guys. And also, I think it was around 69, 70% had that sort of interest in purchasing as well. So I think that obviously that's the first one we've done with you. And I think that was a really good case study. Hopefully the first of many. But we've actually, yeah, I think that's probably the best one that we've done this year.
Nice. Rosie, anything to add?
I fully agree, actually, that was such a successful campaign for us with partnering with the Handbook, because I watched it and every day I would kind of check in and I was like, oh, we've run out of these samples again. And I think almost on the first day we ran out of the first fragrance. It was just so successful and it went really quickly. 100% something we'd do again because we reached a new audience and the brand and the handbook were aligned so nicely. It just worked.
It makes it so easy when the brand and sort of, it's such a good fit for our audience and, our styling, our branding as well. It just is a natural fit. So when we receive assets, when we're putting together that, the Solar email to promote the sampling campaign, it's very, our digital editor is very happy with that and our graphic design as well.
Well, I'm really pleased we had something easy to work with.
And the audience, I'm sure, were very receptive because they are lovely fragrances, obviously, as well. So amazing. So just a massive thank you, obviously, for all of your guys' time, for sparing it with us. We've got some awesome insight from that. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed chatting through it. So a big thank you, and a big thank you to everyone who joined as well. Thank you for all the questions. What I'll do afterwards anyway, I'll share around recording of this so you can obviously watch it back, share it around with your teams and things like that. And yeah, just a massive thank you. And obviously have a great Christmas, everybody. And we'll be running these again in the new year. So we'll have a kind of plan through the new year because that one was a hit, I think. So sign of many more to come. But yeah, huge thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks,
having
Adam.
us.
Thank
Thanks everybody
you.
for watching.
Cool. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.